Good evening, and welcome to the Murfreesboro City School Board meeting. First order of business, we will have our Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Cheryl Harris, and we'll stand for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Board members, it is with great pleasure that I have the honor tonight to introduce our interim director, Dr. Carolyn Baldwin Tucker. We're going to introduce her to our audience at home and to those that are in attendance who've not had a chance to meet her. She has been married to Jesse Tucker for 40 years. They have 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren. And Mr. Tucker is in our audience. If you'll stand, Mr. Tucker, so everybody can see you. Thank you. I want to tell you just a little bit about our interim director. Carolyn Baldwin Tucker, Ph.D., Peabody, and Vanderbilt University. Metro Nashville Public Schools for 30 years. Director of Elementary Schools, 3 years. Elementary Principal, 22 years. And a teacher, 5 years. An exemplary educator for the Tennessee State Department of Education. Educator of the Year, The Time Is Now, Living Legend Award, Greater Nashville Association of Black School Educators. Educator of the Year, National Association of Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Legislator of the Year, Nashville Mayor's Council on Disabilities. 2-term member of the Metro Nashville Davidson County Council. Member of Education and Budget and Finance Committees. Visiting Professor, Lipscomb University, Director of Graduate Studies, 2 years. If you will join me in a big warm welcome to welcome our interim, Dr. Carolyn Baldwin Tucker.
Serve here in this wonderful city, to serve the boys and girls of the Murfreesboro City Schools. I am truly honored and humbled to have an opportunity to work with you and the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. We're going to move along with the approval of the agenda. And before we get ready to take the motion for the approval, I would like to make a motion to move the action and consent items before our communication so we can go ahead and get through with those action items. And I'm going to turn that over after the approval to Ms. Baker.
Do you want to do the consent agenda first?
Yes, ma'am. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved for a motion and a second to change the agenda to move the consent and action items before communications. Ms. Baker?
Ms. Way, would you like to ask for the consent agenda items?
Yes, ma'am. Can I make a motion for the approval of the consent items?
I move we approve the consent items.
Second.
All in favor with sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Thank you.
Okay, now I'll do the first action item on the agenda is the election of school board chair. And according to Board Policy B03 and according to the Tennessee State Code Section 49-2-202 and Section 25-6 of the Murfreesboro City Code, board officers are to be elected annually. The state statute mandates that the board only elect a board chair. However, under Board Policy B03, that policy mandates that the board elect both a board chair and a vice chair. The term for the officers to be elected would be from November 1 of 2009 to October 31 of 2010. Nominations for board chair will be given, followed by a roll call vote, and then nominations will be taken for the vice chair with a roll call vote to follow. A majority, which is 4 votes, is necessary for one to be voted into office, and board officers cannot be elected by acclamation. So first, I will call for nominations for the board chair.
Ms. Baker, it is with pleasure that I nominate Mrs. Mary Wade for board chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? No other nominations? Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote. Ms. Ridley, if you could call the roll, please.
Dr. Andrews? Mrs. Wade? Dr. Buckram?
Mrs. Wade.
Mr. Campbell?
Ms. Wade?
Ms. Duggan?
Mrs. Wade.
Mr. Hopper?
Mrs. Wade?
Ms. Phillips?
Mrs. Wade.
And Mrs. Wade.
Mrs. Wade.
Congratulations, Ms. Ridley. Okay. Now, Ms. Wade received the unanimous vote to be the board chair. Now we'll move on, and I'll ask for nominations for the vice chair.
I nominate Nancy Phillips.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Nancy Duggan.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing no additional nominations for vice chair, I will call for a vote for vice chair. Ms. Ridley, if you would call the roll for the first nominee, Ms. Phillips.
Okay. Dr. Andrews?
Yes.
Dr. Buckram?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
Ms. Duggan?
No.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Ridley, if you could please take a roll call vote for the second nominee, Ms. Duggan.
Dr. Andrews?
No.
Dr. Buckram?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Hopper?
No.
Ms. Phillips?
No.
Ms. Wade?
No.
Okay, seeing that Nancy Phillips received 4 votes, which is a majority, Ms. Phillips is the vice chair. Thank you. And that will close the election for the board chair and vice chair positions.
Thank you, Ms. Baker.
I had a recommendation I'd like to make in light of elections of our chair and vice chair. I'd like to make a motion that we move that election to September in coming years. And my rationale for that is so that individual would have the opportunity to attend the TSBA training for board chairmanship, and that occurs in October. So because of when our election of our chairman and vice chair happens, they aren't able to attend that training until, they've served for almost a whole year. So I would like to restate my motion. I make a motion that we change the election of our chair and vice chair to our September meeting. It'd be changed by 1 month. They would start October 1 and serve to the end of September. And the rationale is so they could attend this TSBA training.
Board members, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions?
Question is, we just voted for someone to serve through October 31st, so could we maybe have the election next year in September and have this person serve until October 31st, and then the next year go October 1st to October 1st, maybe? Just a thought.
Well, the rationale that Ms. Duggan brought up is a true one. Most of the other boards, when we attended the workshop, they do it in August. And that way, it gives the new chair a chance to come in September and attend the meeting in October. That meeting is very important. It is a good board chair meeting and should be attended. In the past, we've not attended. I did this year, but we need to be a part of that. So if she states her motion to do the election in August, you can still, in the motion, if she wants to change it, say, after the attending of the board chair, if possible, then they take office October 1st. Did you want to do that, have the election maybe September, they take office after the October meeting? If you want to change it, that's fine, but I agree with her on changing that so that the person can attend that class.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea, and it's sort of an accident that we ended up having it so late. A couple of years ago, I think it went by that we just didn't realize we were late, and we didn't have an election. So, and so we accidentally ended up having it in October, so I wouldn't have a problem with moving it up.
Question.
Question, Mr. Campbell?
All right, your motion is to elect the chairman and the vice chair in September or October?
To move it 1 month, so it would be in September.
Be in September.
And the reason for that would be so then the person, if we had a new chairperson or even a current chairperson, if they wanted to attend the training again, but TSBA only offers the school board chairman training once a year, and it's every year it's in October. And because our meeting occurs after the training, then our chair doesn't have the opportunity then for a year to attend that training. And it's excellent training.
Could we change the current chair and vice chair to serve until the end of September of 2010, so that then we would elect a chairman and a vice chair in September, and they would actually take over October the 1st, and then that would give them the opportunity to attend as such and not necessarily wait till November to start?
That was my motion.
So you're backing up the time that Ms. Wade and Ms. Phillips will serve, and that will end at the end of September. Is that correct? Of 2010?
Yes,
Okay,
but
okay.
and then it was asked if we could let them serve to the end of October, and I don't have a problem with that whatsoever, and let the cycle start in the following year, since they've already been elected for a term of
1 year.
1 year, the end of September through the beginning of October, or the end of October, beginning of November.
I guess my rationale is that if we start it now, then we get in that cycle presently, and I don't know that Ms. Wade or Ms. Phillips, either one, will necessarily would object to that if we know that, so that we go ahead and get started on that cycle and not wait for 2 more years to get started on it.
It's not going to be 2 years.
Our board meetings are late in September, and you're going to have the election in September. So if you elect them in September, they go to training in October, then at the end of October, they take over, they start their term. So I don't see this.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine,
Could
really.
keep the cycle the way it is, it's just the election would take place a month earlier.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Duggan. Ms. Ridley, you have the motion. Ms. May, would you call the roll?
Could I ask Ms. Duggan to restate how you wanted it?
Make a motion that we change the time of the election of our board chair and vice chair to September instead of the current October. The rationale doesn't have to be part of the
Right.
motion.
Is this a change to board policy, Ms. Baker?
No, the board policy did not ever state what month the election had to take place. It just said after the beginning of the fiscal year, so it could take any time after July 1.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
There was a second.
Second, or did
Are you going to include in that motion that the person continue to serve their term up until the end of... Do we need to include that in the motion or not, Ms. Baker?
That might be needed
That
to
would be
clarify.
helpful.
Okay,
And I believe y'all were stating they would serve their term until the October board meeting, and at the October board meeting, the chair that was elected
Yes.
in September would take over.
Actually, be the end of October if they go
Not
into
until the
training in
actually
October.
November meeting.
Okay.
I think is the wish of the board. So my motion is that we change the election of our chair and vice chair to September, allowing our chair and vice chair, if both choose to go to the state training, and then they would actually begin their performance of those duties in our November meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Duggan.
I'll second that in case we've lost a second. Or is it Dr. Buttram who needs to?
Do you agree?
Yes.
Call the roll, Ms. Ridley.
Dr. Buttram?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
Yes.
Mr. Hockley?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips? Aye. Dr. Andrews?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes. Thank you. I'll now turn it back over to Dr. Tucker for communications. Oh, I'm
Is there
sorry.
not another-
I'm sorry, Dr. Tucker. Ms. Baker, you have something else?
Did you want to do the next action item about the compensation guidelines at this point?
Let's go ahead and do the communications and then come back to that, if that's okay, and that way it gets that out of the way. And we can come back to that. Dr. Tucker?
Thank you. Communications. November 15th through the 21st is American Education Week. The theme is Great Public Schools, a Basic Right and Our Responsibility. The Murfreesboro City Schools Foundation Fashion Show will be held Saturday, October 31st, 11 a.m. at the Stones River Country Club, and persons are invited to attend. Congratulations are in order for Principal Katrine Stevens, who has received 2 awards. She has been named Coordinated School Health Principal of the Year for the State of Tennessee and the Administrator of the Year for the Tennessee Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And I do believe she's here with us, and we're glad to have her. And if I call a name and persons are present, if you would just make it known or stand, it would be wonderful for us to know that you're here. Congratulations to Ms. Andrea Kane, Coordinator of School Health, who has been named Health Professional of the Year for the Tennessee Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Congratulations are definitely in order for Chairlady Mary Wade, who will receive her boardsmanship Level 5 status at the TSBA Conference Banquet, November 16th. Congratulations, Chairlady.
Thank you.
And Dr. Tucker, if I may speak at this moment, just in recognition of Mrs. Wade, to our knowledge, in doing some research today, and I thank Linda Ridley for helping us with that, and also talking with TSBA, we are not aware of any other Murfreesboro City School board member who has earned boardsmanship Level 5. So we are, especially proud of Mrs. Wade. And just for those in the audience that may not know, there are 5 levels of boardmanship, and to reach Level 5, you have to have a portfolio that's submitted and judged, which is rather extensive, plus all the meetings that you attend and extra things that you do and conferences that you go to. So we are extremely proud of Mrs. Wade for the extra going that second mile to equip herself to be an outstanding board member and to be aware of not only things within our own district but also across the state as being a board person. She's attended countless school board academies, for one thing, and lots of other experiences and events, so we're just very proud of her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we are.
Congratulations to board member Dr. Ray Buttram, who has been nominated as a finalist in Ruthie's category of Favorite Elected Official. Congratulations to Dr. Buttram. Also, in that same keeping with Ruthie's categories, congratulations to Cason Lane Principal Chad Fletcher and Scales Schools Principal Katrine Stevens, who were finalists in the Favorite School Principal category, and to Scales Elementary Teacher Julia Barrett as a finalist in the favorite school teacher category.
Dr. Tucker, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
fine.
Also in that category, we have one of our own board members who's actually a retired principal, but he was elected as the principal of the year on the Ruthie's this year, Mr. Butch Campbell.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to board member Nancy Phillips and City Cable's 3, Steve Burris, for their Honorable Mention Award by the National Association of Telecommunications Officers and Advisors at the 24th Annual Government Programs Award for the Murfreesboro Program. Cable 3 also received second and third place for We Know Education in Rutherford County. Video produced by John Padgett and Terry Sterling. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations to the Bellwood Bowden Preschool for recognition by the U.S. Commerce Association as the Best of Murfreesboro Award for 2009. Discovery School 6th grade teacher Kathy Mall is pleased to announce that 37 students were selected to be published in the Creative Communications Summer Poetry Contest, earning the school the Poetic Achievement Award. Congratulations to 4th grade teacher Christina Maddox for her recognition as a Titans Teacher of the Week. Ms. Maddox will receive $400 in supplies and be recognized on the Titans radio show. Principal Robin Newell, who's also here today, thanks the following businesses for the support of MNP's Fall Festival. Dr. Stephen Simpson, Lewis Bakeries, Clark Body Shop, and WGNS Radio 1450. And thanks to Smyrna Bowling Alley and the Northfield Kroger for their annual monetary support, and Third Baptist Church for the wonderful luncheon provided for teachers. Thanks to the Joy of Living Lutheran Church for the donation from several congregations of underclothing for students, and to the Bill Shaw Construction for donating school supplies for all children through the system's community outreach program. Thanks to the Advent Lutheran Church for their $110 donation to the Family Resource Center. Congratulations to Bradley Band teacher, Mr. Luke Hill, who has received another $5,000 grant from the Burning Foundation. Mr. Hill hopes to add a drum line to his music program. Congratulations to MNP kindergarten teacher, Ms. Donna Hill, who recently had a morning meeting idea published in the Mailbox magazine. Thanks to Ricky Skaggs and the Skaggs Family Records for their $200 donation to the Discovery School. The Discovery School 5th grade performed Spread a Little Love Around at a recent Barnes & Noble event. Congratulations to Cason Lane Academy School Counselor Laura Perkins, who received a Community Service Award for her service to children, especially those whose parents have been deployed during Operation Enduring Freedom. Thanks to Mr. Ron Moody and the ExxonMobil Educational Alliance for the program for their donation of $750 to Scales Elementary.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tucker.
Thank you.
And we're back to our action items. Board members, under action items number B, we'll start our discussion on that. We hope to have as much discussion as you need to. Ms. Baker?
Dr. Jones did call me this morning, and he shared some information with me that he wanted me to share with the board before you began your discussions to help you formulate your discussions regarding this issue. He indicated that what he is in need of is guidelines. He does not need any definite figure or number for the set salary, is what he indicated to me. He said that you could provide a salary range with which the board would endeavor to stay within depending on the individual's experience and qualifications. He didn't want the board to box themselves into a very specific number, so he was saying a range and guidelines as to what to look at to determine where they would fall in that range. And he stated some things to consider are, does the board want the salary to be within a certain range within the state? For example, last time he said he was discussing the top quartile or the mid-range of the top quartile. He said that the board could compare Murfreesboro City School Director salary to that of other city school systems and special school districts within Tennessee. He thought that might be a good suggestion. And he did indicate to me, he stated to share that district size is not necessarily relevant when making comparisons. He said in his practice, often the amount of salary provided to that director is more based on the needs of the district. He gave me the example of if you have a district with 3,000 students where they're severely underachieving and they need a very competitive director to come in that's able to really help bring those 3,000 children up, they may merit a salary similar to that of a larger system, and he wanted me to share that example with you. He also indicated that the salary should be based on the needs of the district and the qualifications of the director, such as the director's degrees, length of experience, and their background. And then he also referenced that I believe Mr. Wilkerson last week provided you information from a past salary study that the board did that gave a range of the director's salary. I know it is a bit of an outdated study, but there was a past salary study that I believe y'all got a copy of that gave a range. So that's the information he asked me to share with you before you started your discussion, and I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Harper.
Several years ago, the board employed a consultant to assist the board in establishing a salary administration plan. The consultant was picked he had done consulting work from Nissan and was a experienced human resources compensation expert and that type of thing. So, and I think that I believe all administrators and the director were included in that. And we have had for years, and still have, because it hadn't been rescinded, a salary administration policy that has salary ranges in there. I'm not sure if that has been communicated to Dr. Jones in the past, or do you know if he's aware of that?
I don't know.
And it would have a range of salaries in there, which would be, from what I've heard, would be applicable to, you basically have the range of what you're going to pay, and then based on ability and experience and expertise.
Is this the document you're talking about? It was sent to the board. It was Murfreesboro City Schools compensation ranges for 08-09, adjusted for 1.2% increases.
I think that was in our budget materials that we got this fall, and I haven't seen that recently, but that's been provided to us previously. So I don't understand really what his question is. That should have been communicated to him, that's kind of what range and the concept is that you identify what a certain job's worth to an employer, and then you take out all the personality about whether you like them or don't or whatever, but the employers establish this range of what a job's worth, and kind of depersonalizes the matter. So
I'm not sure that's the document that you're talking about, because you were talking about the document that we've gotten in the past had a fairly wide range, as I recall. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we tended to be at on the bottom half of that range. And we've been trying through
Go
the.
ahead.
Is that okay? We've been
That's
trying through the. I'll let you look at that first. Through the years, to kind of push up our administrative salaries because they were becoming less competitive with other systems, and we're not at all in line with the salaries for our teachers and some of the other staff.
That is does he not have a copy of that?
Yes, he's got a copy of that.
That's our current policy now, to apply those ranges. So we need to change the policy if we're not going to apply those ranges.
Are those ranges still current, Mr.
They haven't
Hopper?
been rescinded.
Have they been updated with cost of living and so forth, do you know?
Yes, they have been.
Okay.
And is that a board policy? Because I didn't see numbers at the top.
I think it was passed by the board at one of the meetings early on when that consultant was talking to the board, presenting the information to the board, that it was adopted by the board at that point as the ranges to work towards.
Mr. Anderson may have some information he could share with you.
That particular document was approved, I think it was in 2004, 2005 when the consultant came in, and every year since that it's been in your budget book, but it's been increased. If we increase the salaries 1.2%, every year it's reflected that increase, so that's not the same numbers you had the first time it was approved.
Right.
It has moved based on what you have approved.
That's what I was wondering. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
It was October 2004, I believe, if you look in the minutes, is when that was approved.
Okay. Are there any more questions or discussion?
I would like to look at that again before.
Dr. Buttram?
Isn't it our job to set, even if that range, the director's salary, or the director's range is that right now, is it our job as a board to either redo that range for that one position, since that's our only position?
I think what Dr. Jones was looking for is for the board to tell him, yes, this is the range we're looking at, or what other criteria to use to help determine where on that range you would want to fall. He was also wanting information about the type of, not the specifics, but the extent you may go to for benefits package. If you're still considering the same benefits package that was provided to Ms. Mathis, or if there may be additional items the board would consider putting in depending on the candidate. He needs some of that information when he starts interviewing individuals.
Dr. Buttram?
Well, on the compensation or the perks and the benefits, I would like for us to revisit the car allowance. I think either we could look at either providing a system car or lower that. I don't believe, I think that was a little bit inflated due to the proximity of our schools to each other in our district. I don't think we have a school that's more than 10 miles apart from one school to the next. So I think we should offer in the package mileage as opposed to a car allowance.
Any of the other board members have anything you want to say about, Dr. Buttram has brought up the car allowance that's in the budget already, and most of you know what that is. So do you have any comment or anything else you'd like to ask about the compensation package for as meds that Ms. Mathis that we're using one that Mrs. Mathis was given? Do you want to still stick with that and maybe have some discussion? The only thing, when you talk about the range, and this was just my thinking about it, whenever we get the slate of candidates that we're going to be looking at, that may be something that they want to negotiate with you if they've seen the package already, and I'm pretty sure they've asked about it. That's really a negotiating tool that you can always negotiate with the person that we choose. Maybe that we can just go to mileage. It's really according to who you get. That may be something that we'll need to talk about at that time. And like you said, you don't want to box yourself in and start taking too much. He's really just wanting a range. Are you willing to go with the range that's on the paper? Or were you wanting to change the range at at the end of the... I was looking at that as it went by. I didn't remember the numbers until I saw them again. But that's really what he's wanting from us. Is it not, Ms. Baker, just the range?
That's what he indicated to me, that he wanted a range and guidelines.
Or
He didn't
maybe-
want specific numbers.
Or a concept that we would be in the top 25%
Right.
or something like that. Uh-huh.
Ms. Phillips and then Mr. Hopper.
Well, I was just going to make a motion, but it may be premature, that we stay within the document that we have standing. It gives us a lot of flexibility, and that was I was going to make that motion. But if you're not ready for a motion, Ms. Wade, I can hold it.
Well, I'd like for the others to, they're still in the discussion, hold on to your motion. Mr. Hopper and then...
I think that the idea is if you have the range or whatever, it's going to get down to negotiations with Dr. Jones and Ms. Wade with the individual candidate, and it may be you have somebody that has no experience and has never, has lesser qualifications, and you would negotiate to the low end of the range, or if it's necessary to get the right candidate, then you would have the flexibility to go midpoint or whatever. So until you start talking to the individuals and see what they work for, you really don't know what you're talking about. So I think other than just saying this is the range that we're comfortable with, well, that's about all you can do tonight. You can't say we want to offer somebody $30,000 to come work here. But, and the one thing on the other point too, on the car, I think that kind of came up because that's pretty, most of the senior people, a lot of the managers within the city of Murfreesboro receive car allowances, or they used to, and this is comparable with what they're receiving, and so I think that's how that figure came up previously, and it would cost you with insurance and the cost of vehicles and that type thing. I think in paying, you'd be better off paying a flat amount, I think, for the car than you would be the system buying a new car and providing the car and all that type thing to the individual. So anyway, that's the background on the car.
All righty. Dr. Andrews, let's go down the road for anything you'd like to say while we're rolling through here, and then we'll come back around to Ms. Phillips and I can keep up with everybody. Okay. Dr. Andrews?
I'd just like to comment that perhaps when if you're to make your motion, that we state that this will be guidelines, but that it's not going to be etched in stone, because we don't know who's going to be applying and what they may need, and we do know that our system has a lot of challenges ahead of it, with No Child Left Behind and with the changing schools and growth and that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that we don't box ourselves in either direction. So I'd hope that whatever we suggest, it's just that, a suggestion.
Ms. Duggan?
Mr. Washington, could you tell us what other city employees get as far as compensation for travel?
The council, we do get a vehicle allowance, but we've gotten away from the other employees. It's a mileage, like Ray was talking about, so much per mile.
With the manager?
And that would be based on what the federal rate for mileage reimbursement is, okay, which goes up and down. Okay, because I know it would be as Mr. Hopper's already indicated, be far less expensive to pay the mileage versus applying a car and the upkeep and the insurance and all that on a car. So I
He's
think
probably right.
it would be much to our advantage to pay the mileage or even a flat rate per month versus the other. The only other comment I have at the current time is that I do think that a benefits package should not be any greater than what we're currently offering, that we should negotiate within that and if possible even be on the less in some areas, but it for sure should not exceed.
Well, you know, if you get a director, and I may be talking out of turn, what if the director doesn't live here and you're paying mileage? You know, would you want to do that?
We wouldn't pay mileage to work. We would pay mileage once they got to work to go from one place to the next. But they would not be paid for coming to work and home.
Okay.
And that's a common practice, that you're only paid for mileage once you get to the job and you travel within that.
Okay. Dr. Butler?
Yes, I had a couple of comments. The first, I don't think we should consider looking at a quartile or a percentage of that we pay in the top 10% or we pay in the top 25%. Just because I think that would need to be tied to performance, and it does not correlate with our performance. And the other comment was I would like to see the range as we discuss and do the interview process be dropped to where the max would be around $100,000 to $105,000 for the salary. Right now, in our range, we have $139,000 as the top of the salary, and I believe that's what our city manager makes, isn't it, Mr. Washington? I think his salary is $140,000. That's right. So, we're looking at another city employee, but one that definitely duties are not as important, or they're as important, but there's not as many and complex as the city manager. And the other point would be that I think that if you look through educational institutions throughout the state of Tennessee, if you start to find some that have 7,000 elementary students, and again, Ms. Baker made the point that Dr. Jones had talked to us about the makeup of the system, the needs, and when you have just elementary students compared to the needs of middle school and high school students, and not just the students, but the teachers and the families and the curriculum, everything, you're looking at a system that does not really warrant a high-cost manager like a system that might have 7,000 K-12 students. Again, I know we can do comparisons in the Southeast, but you can't compare us to Atlanta. You can't compare us to really Memphis. We have to look around here in Middle Tennessee, I think, and then, again, we have to look at the school makeup.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips?
I have a few comments. One is, would we need to include in that package anything about a moving allowance if the candidate did not live locally? And if that is, then I don't know who would know best about that. Perhaps you can contact people or find out what would be the typical moving allowance that would be allowed if the candidate has to relocate. The second thing is many times I believe you get what you pay for in this world. And I know that it has been our goal to keep our teachers, when possible, within the top 10 percentile as far as pay goes, at least within the top 25 percentile. And, I wish we could get them in the top 5. But I really think that our students and our teachers warrant us getting the very best candidate for our children and our system that we can get. I think if we, if we allow ourselves flexibility and then allow our board chair and Dr. Jones and Ms. Baker to work with negotiating. And then, I think that we will probably come out on top that way, rather than boxing ourselves in too much with, what we could and, what we shouldn't do, and because we have a good range there. And it's, I think we need a top candidate for our school system. We've always wanted to support our system in the very best positive way we can. And I think that, we have to be careful about being of a mindset. I think we have to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. I've always believed that. But I think we have to be careful not to get into a mindset that is negative to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
This is all good discussion, but, and Ray, you're talking about the city manager, don't let the public forget that the existing city manager had 11, 12, 13 years of experience. So that went into the equations of why he's sitting where he's sitting. We already had a tried and blue person available. You don't have that. So you need to have a full range, give you some flexibility, and let the best person come in here and do the best job he can on a performance level. Make them accountable. Make sure you got the expectations where you want them to, you as a board, and go from there. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Campbell.
Well, I think we need to have a range of several dollars. I don't know what somebody said, between, would you say 80 and 105, or 85 and 105? And I think that's what we need to be able to work with the applicants who want, and make our decision from that. Now, and I don't know in comparison to this, but now you've got to remember, in my thinking anyway, if we hire a teacher, and I realize the director is, I guess, more responsibility than the teacher, although the teacher has a huge responsibility with the students that they've got. But if we bring a teacher in here from another system, and if they've got 15 years experience, we're only giving them credit for 10, which I don't know whether I don't agree with that, but that's the way it's been. I don't think that as a board, we need to be paying civic club dues. Nobody ever paid mine. I always paid them myself, and I imagine that most other employees, it's the same thing. The car allowance is probably going to need to be on a mileage basis. There are a lot of things in the compensation package, as far as expenses, professional conferences, and things like that. I'd like to be able to, for us to see what those expenses are every month, rather than just giving a blanket check because somebody turns in expenses. Particularly like for meals and that sort of thing. I think we need to, we're not in a situation where we've got multi-millions of dollars that we can pay, but at the same time we don't want to be skimpy and not pay what we need. But I think this is an opportunity for us to do some good negotiating, and I think we're going to find some good applicants that are willing to come into a good system that's already established, with some challenges as well.
Dr. Andrews.
Looking at our compensation ranges, these ranges apply. We don't just have the director of schools. We have the associate director of schools, finances, and administrative services director. There's several layers of salaries, and the salary range that Dr. Buttram has mentioned for the director of schools is actually in the lower half of what our range has been for the associate director of schools. So that's way below what we've been trying to accomplish over the past several years, with the aim of having our system continue to be a lighthouse system, to be a lighthouse district. So, if we want to lower our goals, then we don't we could find somebody who would work for an associate director of schools salary, perhaps, but I'm not willing to do that yet. I think we need to try to find the best person we can and not be overly generous, but be able to do enough to get the best person for the job. I don't think any of the salaries that are on this list are going to break the bank. The other comment that I wanted to make was that we are hiring a CEO of a large organization. The director of schools has who knows how many employees?
Total close to 1,000.
How many?
Close to 1,000.
Close to 1,000 employees. That's a lot of employees that are directly under the director of schools, and it's really I don't know how many people work for the city outside of the school system. It's probably not that different, maybe even fewer people. I'm not sure unless you talk about. Do you know how many?
I think with part-time staff it may be 1,100, 1,200.
Okay, so it's similar. We're talking about, a similar size organization, and you're probably including the police department in that too, I would guess.
The whole city staff, and I could
Right.
be wrong. I know
Right.
that part-time staff really makes it fluctuate.
Right. So, we're talking about similar positions and, similar kinds of responsibilities, and so it's not like we need to have someone that gets paid a lot less than the manager of the city. So, those are my comments along those lines.
Dr. Butler and then Ms. Phillips.
I wanted to make a comment about the salary range. I did realize that if we lowered the director's range, that we would have to adjust some other ranges. I don't believe we employ an associate director of schools, do we? So for us to say that we would be hiring someone at an associate director's salary is not really a fair or true statement, because we don't have an associate director of school. And if you're in education and you see responsibilities of principals, supervisors, directors, I think you would see that $105,000 for a system like Murfreesboro City is very fair. And I think that when you're talking to people who are interested in applying for the job, they may not apply if it's $105 and they're really wanting a lot of money. But I think if they have the school system at heart and they want to do what's best for children, I think they're probably not doing it for the money anyway. And I don't think that paying more necessarily gets you a better person. What gets you a better person is finding the person who's the best fit for our system. And if that person's willing to do it for $105,000, which would be very fair, then that's the direction we should go.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips, and then...
I'd like to call them up for the vote.
We're still into discussion.
You want to make your motion?
I'd like to make the motion, yeah. Ms. Wade,
What's your
Chairman Wade,
motion?
is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. We'll entertain it.
Okay. I'd like to make the motion that we use the compensation range that's already in this document as a guideline for negotiation with the candidate.
Second.
I have a question.
Question, Dr. Butler?
All right, so if we use this compensation range and 102,000, or actually 103,000, is the lowest part of the range, even though we're using it as a guideline, a person that's looking at this job would think that 103,000 is the lowest they would be offered. Is that correct?
I would
We're
if I
talking
was
about
looking at it.
guidelines.
Okay.
When you say range, since we've been shoveling it around, I thought if we were talking about range, we were setting something in the category of maybe you want to start at 90,000 and run it through 139,250 what's on here. That was a range. That is a range. You may not start at 90,000. You may start at 101 or 99.8 thousand.
But we couldn't if we go with this range, is that
Well,
right?
No, we can do anything.
Anything
These
you
are
want.
only guidelines. They're not, we could go higher, we can go lower.
Well, I can't imagine
But it just
someone
gives them a
being-
little ballpark.
If this is your range and this is the range you give Dr. Jones, 2,961 is your start, is your range. Range to run.
They would not expect to make less than
No.
that.
That would be their thought when they
Yeah.
looked at the
Yes.
motion.
All right.
It would be mine.
Okay.
Question.
Mr. Campbell?
All right, and then if you add other compensation packages, you go back and what we've got now, we're paying almost $5,000 a year for a car. So, okay, so you're up to $108,000 anyway. Then you've got insurance and benefits and all that. You're not hiring somebody for just $102,961. And I think that's why I would like to see us a little different on the lower end of the range, because if you went back and figured, I think I'm pretty close. I'm looking at director at 116,184. Time you add the compensation and the packages, you're knocking on the door of $125,000 a year. Now that, and I'm going to compare that to other systems close by with 37 or 38,000 students in a K-12 situation, and the salary range is not much greater than that. I don't know, folks. I just don't see that. I just don't see it. I may be way off base, but
Are we still in comments, or are we?
We're still in the question section. Dr. Andrews,
Go ahead if you want
Ms.
to say
Duggan.
something.
Did you want to go ahead and say yours while we're on the roll? You want to
be last.
I wish we had those numbers in front of us again for the other systems, but all of those other systems did not include, their compensation packages, which are similar. And I think in Metro, they're getting over $200,000 a year, and we're not talking about anything close to that. But there are other systems close by that are, this is the range that that people are getting paid in the area.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Ms. Duggan?
I think the range on the low end needs to be lower, 90,000, to give us some room to grow. I mean, if we were to bring a director in and their first year they were making 130, when we look at the current economy and the fact that the city is looking at, no increases this year for their people and possible cuts in the next budget year, I think we have to be extremely careful that we don't put ourselves in a situation that will be difficult in the future. We need room to grow and room to give them raises, hopefully. So I would like to see that the lower end be lowered. 102 I don't think is low enough to give us a wider range, because we might hire someone that's maybe not been a director, maybe been an assistant director, maybe been a director for 1 year. So that's my thinking, that we need to lower that range.
Okay, was it anyone? Ms. Hopper, you now ready?
If I recall correctly, on the compensation ranges here, it has associate director. At the time we did the study, or the study was done, we did not have an assistant director. So, and that's one thing we need to point out is, while our system doesn't have an assistant director, and we don't have that expense, where most others would have an assistant director and have that expense. When we start hiring people, we're going to have, we're going to have to ask, what degrees do they have, what experience do they have, do they have the expertise to do what we want? We've got to pay to get the proper person. I mean, we can sit here and say we don't want to pay but $30,000 a year, but if that person can't do the job, well, we're just wasting our time here. So we've got to, and I know a lot of you, it'd be wonderful to pay $30,000 a year, but as you see, we've got the the schedule of compensation, and we've got people making close to what you're talking about trying to hire people for. I don't know many places where the boss makes less than the employees, and if I were an employee, I would want the boss making a lot, because I'm sure in the heck not going to make more than the boss does. So, and then the other comment I have is, it's not uncommon for a director of schools to make more than the city manager does in other places. So, but the main thing is, this is a difficult job. There's 1,000 employees, and we have 7,000 students with 14,000 parents calling with big problems, and this job's where the rubber meets the road. That you can have administrators and all kind of folks, but they're going to walk in the door, and somebody's got to make a decision. And we need the best person we can making that decision, and we need a leader and a manager, and we just don't need to have some yahoo walking in here that's making $30,000 a year and being in charge of 1,000 employees and a $50 million budget. So you can cut it down to all you want, but you've eventually got to go out and interview people and attract somebody that's qualified to come here and do the job. And we don't have anybody that's already experienced on staff or that I know of, and I wouldn't think you'd want to go out and hire somebody that's had no experience to take on this kind of responsibility. So anyway, that's all. I think there are things like you could convert the salary allowance to mileage, but all these other benefits are standard school system benefits. They apply to all the employees. So, yeah, I mean, arguing about the benefits and worrying about how much they do or cost, you're wasting time on that part. So, I've had my say. I'm ready to vote.
Are there any more questions? Hearing none. Ms. Phillips, if you don't mind, I don't want to mess your motion up, but I think it was that you wanted us to vote starting with the range that we have on this paper.
Yes, and as a general guideline, not as written in stone.
All right.
Ms. Baker.
And that range is 102,961 to 139,250. Am I
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Baker.
I don't believe we had a second to that motion.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Did we?
Uh-huh.
Just saying.
And that, by the way, is based on 2008, 2009, rather than 2009, 2010 salaries, which may not be going up any anyway, so that may not make much difference.
Let me assure the board that when we sit down and with Ms. Baker and start this, and maybe your candidate resume would look like mine, with no experience with this, with being an associate director or a director of schools, certainly you would not want your board chair to sit down with this figure right here. I think you would guide me to start that a lot lower. But like some of the board members have already said, you get somebody at the top of the range, that person comes in with experience, you're able to look and you're going to interview them and hear different things. We're going to have to make some serious decisions at that time. But before that time, you've got time to change. All you're giving Dr. Art Jones is a range and giving him a chance to look at that range and give Ms. Baker and myself a chance to work with him. We've had a motion and a second. Ms. Ridley, if you don't mind, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Andrews?
Aye.
Dr. Buttram?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Duggan?
No.
Mr. Hopper?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Ms. Wade?
Yes. Dr. Tucker, reports and information.
Thank you. A personnel update. If you look behind tab 2, you will see the usual personnel information. And continuing on with the completion of 90 days, we have Isabel Garcia, EA at Cason Lane Academy, Tracy Giles, school secretary at Discovery School, Kimberly Hasselbrink, an EA at Cason Lane, Mark Martin, special education EA at Scales, Andrea Rumley, special education EA at Scales, and the interim teachers that are hired for 2009-2010 also behind tab 2, and the new hired teachers for 2009-2010 also behind tab 2. Monthly revenue and expenditures report. I'm going to yield at this time to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Behind tab 3 is your monthly expenditure and revenue report. We are, at this time, our net income for the period is negative $4,451,000. Last year at this time, we were negative $4,068,000, so there's a $383,000 negative difference on that. Just on the revenue side, we are closely monitoring the sales tax collections, and for the month of July, the county was behind, which meant our revenue was behind 10% on sales tax, and then it improved during the month of August to 8%. So we're hoping that it's the trend of coming out of the recession. We're hoping that the city and the county will not suffer as much as we continue into the holiday season. Overall, it's about a 9% reduction on sales tax. Our other monies are online for the city is always is right on schedule. The state BEP money is right on schedule as well. Revenue, as you can see from last year and this year, is 14.9 versus 14.8. So we dropped our anticipation down a little bit in revenue, so we didn't really get hurt on this as much. Just but let you know the trends are there, so we're keeping an eye on it real close. On the expenditure side, we are at the 25% mark of the year, and we're at 23.2 in our expenditure, so we're right on target there. Last year at this time we were 22.8%. Part of the reason for that is we have put in capital outlay, and you'll see that one's at 94%. The Black Fox roof, we haven't moved that out of, we accounted for it in that line item, but that amount was quite a bit of money. For that, it was over $200,000 that we paid on this one. That was really not in the original budget. Remember, we did that out of fund balance, and that's why it shows the way it shows. Overall, we're fine. We're where we should be. We are watching the categories that could be troublesome. One other category that the state kind of threw a little curveball on us, and if you look at the attendance line, you'll see we jumped up to 53%, and the reason for that is we had to pay $17,500 to a company called Century Consultants to support the STAR student. The state used to pick up that, and they transferred that to local money, local districts. So we didn't know that when we developed our budget, but we had to pay it, and that's why that one's a little bit out of whack. But overall, we're in good shape for where we should be right now. We'll continue to monitor the revenues and the expenses.
I've had some contacts and conversation with some other people about the state shifting down some of the expenses that they previously paid to the local government entity. Do you have any more of that type thing that you anticipate?
We're not thinking this time, because what the state used was the federal stimulus money, the ERA funds, to cover those ones. There was going to be a lot of those, and they ended up with that one, and there's still internet discussions about the possibility of picking up internet, but nothing's happened on that at this time, so we still should be okay. We're not looking for anything new coming this year. Next year is a whole new ballgame.
Any other questions? We'll move now down to the attendance report. If you'll look behind tab 4 of your information, we will show that the students, total students including the special education students through the second month, the report shows that we have 6,931 students. The total students at this second month last year reporting 6,907. We show that the last month, first reporting period, we had 6,914. We have seen growth this particular month, so that's good. Also, for the second month, we have a 95% attendance rate. And looking at the pupil-teacher ratio, we have 19.02, and this is not including the specialty teachers. These are the teachers that are regular classroom teachers. Also, we have our pre-K information that's to the side of 382 students, 19 teachers. We are, in our K-3 average, we are doing better than the state is in terms of where we are. Also, we're looking at the total membership being better this second month than it was the first, so that's a definite plus, and things are looking good in terms of our membership totals. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Is there any other business? Ms. Duggan?
I'd like to request that a letter be written on behalf of the board to be sent to all of our employees, commending them for the great job they do in honor of American Education Week. And I would be happy to draft that letter if the board would like me to, or Mrs. Wade, you may do that, but I think that that should be done. We did that last year, and there was a lot of positive feedback on that. We need to let them know that they are greatly appreciated.
I'm sure they would appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms.
That'd be great.
Is there any other that you want on the other business, or anything you want added to the agenda for next month? Nope. Well, hearing none, is it any?
When is our next get-together?
Our next
Meeting?
I think it's the 10th, isn't it?
It is November the 10th. It's the time 6:30, 5 o'clock. November 10th, 5 o'clock. Mr. Campbell's getting popular with that. All righty, since there's nothing else, we are adjourned.